Good afternoon, LinkedIn land, and welcome to another Philanthropy Friday. It's a beautiful sunny day out. I love the summer. I just came back from New York yesterday. I was there for a week. There's nothing like the change of seasons. It makes you feel alive, that's for sure. So I'm really happy that people are finding some time this afternoon to join us for another edition of Philanthropy Friday. Gauging by the number of people who have registered, this must be really resonating with people. Either that or we have like 150 doctors who've been following Dr. Yatin Chadha for a long time and just can't get enough of him and want to have some more of him today on Philanthropy Friday. We've been going now quite well for a while now, and what Philanthropy Friday is all about is we profile people, we profile products, we profile strategies, really for a really interesting cross-section of viewers made up primarily of professional advisors, charities, philanthropists, and interested people who just want to learn. And I'm Mark Halpert. I'm the CEO of WealthInsurance.com. I've been in professional practice now for 33 years, and our business is primarily working with successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and affluent families in three areas. One is in estate planning, just making sure that people have their financial architecture lining up with the financial furniture they have, and that's up to date. Today I was with a family. They're an older family net worth of $40 million who don't have wills and powers of attorney. I know that sounds crazy, but just assume 50% of the population have wills and the other 50% generally don't have them up to date or not properly set up. Second area that we're involved with is tax mitigation strategies, and we specialize in tax-exempt life insurance, which is becoming more and more in vogue, especially now that the new budget came out and things like surplus stripping, non-CCPCs, all the other offshore stuff is all sort of disappearing, and life insurance is definitely getting a lot more attention. So we like to help people to preserve their family wealth. And the third area that we're involved with is philanthropy, which is really helping people create enduring legacies, often just by converting taxes into charity. So as a member of the board of many hospital foundations, TV Ontario, the Jewish Foundation, it's remarkable. I meet so many donors, and you would think they have everything all together. And generally they have very, very good advisors who, sometimes it might be a little bit more reactive versus proactive. But the one area that I've noticed is that people have not incorporated strategic philanthropy into their estate planning. So I think that's a really important thing that we're going to be speaking about today. And that's part of what Philanthropy Friday is about. But, today we're going to be speaking about doctor's orders, 4 reasons to be philanthropic, with Dr. Yatin Chadha, who is a radiologist at Northern General. And just a couple of housekeeping. The reason we're doing all of this is our mission is threefold. We want to transform Canadian philanthropy by inspiring and educating professional advisors and charities in their planned legacy giving and donors to incorporate strategic philanthropy into estate planning. It's amazing what can be done, and we'll share you a bit about that. We also want a Canada where people know what insurance is, but they really don't properly understand what it can do, especially in the high net worth area. And we really would like to change that. And finally, we have a pretty ambitious goal that we'd like to create a national community of 100 professional advisors and charities that if each of us are doing $10 million a year of legacy giving, and you have 100 of those, that's $1 billion. And that's not like sort of pie in the sky. That's like crowdfunding. We really feel we could be creating $1 billion a year. And we have about 24 already partners in this, and we'd love for you to get involved. And by the way, there's a chat box here. So the link for that will be there. But if you have any questions along the way for me or for Dr. Chadha, please, you'll let us know. The other couple of housekeeping, the reason that we're doing this, and I think Dr. Chadha will also agree, is I'm doing it for a word called tzedakah, which is a Hebrew word often mistranslated as charity. Tzedakah actually means justice or righteousness. We have an actual obligation, if you're doing well, to give back. And, we've created over $120 million just over the last 2 years. And that makes me excited to get up every day. And all I ask when people say, Mark, why do you share all this secret sauce with people? I say, I'm happy to do it. All I ask is that you share your success stories back with us so we can basically feel good. It gives us the juice to continue going and also helps us get us closer towards that $1 billion. Couple of last slide, and this is just some things you need to know, and I think it's very important. Charitable donations in any given year can be used to mitigate up to 75% of net taxable income and can be carried forward for up to 5 years. So when September, October, November, December shows up and you know that you're going to have a tax bill in April, that's the time to be doing some planning. And Dr. Chadha will help us understand what are some of the ways to maximize your giving and minimize your tax. The other thing that I think is much more important is that in the year of death, charitable donations can be used to mitigate 100% of terminal estate taxes, plus going back the prior year, which means if somebody has $1 million estate tax and they create a $2 million gift, either with a beneficiary on something or using some life insurance, leaving $2 million to charity or to their charitable foundation, and structuring it properly, then the $2 million goes to charity. The $1 million of tax becomes $1 million of charity. There can be nothing better than that. Life insurance also can be owned and paid for by a charity, by a private foundation, or by a donor advised fund. That means you can use money that's already in there to create more money. And actually, you don't have to wait till somebody dies. It can actually create a cash flow while the person's alive as well. And finally, we had all this information about the alternative minimum tax. And fortunately, it was not as punitive as we thought it would be for charities. The good news, even when they were discussing this, is that there's no AMT on death, which means charitable donations can be really maximized on death. So that's the end of the introduction. What I'd like to do right now is I would like to call upon our very, very special guest, Dr. Yatin Chadha. And Yatin, thank you so much for coming. We became friends on LinkedIn. You had me on your show, and now I have you on my show. So I'm so grateful to be able to reciprocate.
We did, Mark. Thank you to you and Phil for having me on today. It's a real pleasure to join you guys on Philanthropy Fridays. So, and also just to go back, Mark, I saw one of your presentations on LinkedIn. It was a year or two ago, probably 2 years ago in March, and you were talking about kind of all these little secrets behind giving, doing good, and also getting some financial benefits along the way. And I was watching that presentation and I told myself, I maybe understand 5 to 10% of this. So I felt like at that time, it was good to get in touch with you. And then it kind of took off. So I always tell people, get out there, have conversations, because you really never know what you're going to learn.
Beautiful. Well, you've come a long way, because clearly, I kind of say you drank the Kool-Aid on this, because I know you talk about it so much on your podcast. And you really become an ambassador for wanting to help people. But maybe you can just let everybody know a little bit about your background. Like, you're not just a philanthropist, you're a doctor, a radiologist. Tell us about your background and what you do and your family and whatnot.
Sure. Most importantly, I have a beautiful wife, Seema, and we have 2 boys, Rohan and Zion. They're 7 and just about 10. And so they are entering what I think and what I've talked to people about is the golden years. Like this, these are the years where it is such a wonderful experience to spend time with them every day. They want to spend time with us, and so we're trying to make the most of that. My background professionally, I went all over the place for school, from Queens to Vancouver for medical school, back to Queens. I grew up in Kingston. And at that point, I kind of told my parents, listen, guys, I love you, but I need to get out and see the world. So I left again from Queens, went to San Diego for a year, started practice. Oh, it's a beautiful place. Has a very soft spot in our hearts to this day. Started practice in Calgary, but then eventually Ontario and Toronto called us back because of all the family ties. And so I've been in Toronto since 2017, practicing as a general radiologist at North York General Hospital. And I have a few leadership roles there too. So I am the education lead there. So anytime we have medical students, residents who come in, I supervise them. And it's been a wonderful journey. And I think if my journey has taught me one thing, it's that my ideal life involves change, involves a variety, and involves learning about new things, taking the plunge from time to time, because when you do that, you learn a lot about yourself. And so it's something that I do like to remind people about. Don't be afraid to take the plunge once in a while. The new experiences are very good for growth.
Good for you. And I'm with you on that. I have 5 children, thank God. It's beautiful. But I've always told my kids that in life there are 2 types of people. There are winners and there are learners. And that you never lose. You always take chances and take risks and ramp up. And I heard from I forget who it was, but they said if you're going to fall, at least fall forward. Don't fall backward. Fall forward. So at least
100%.
it ramps
Yeah.
you forward. So, but you're a young man. Like I mean, I'm just saying you're very accomplished for at this stage of life.
Uh,
You've done a lot.
Mark, I do appreciate that. I really do. I mean, I'm moving now from early career to almost mid-career, and this is the time when I started to talk to my wife Seema about I think it's really time to start talking about how to give back. We're Don't get me wrong, we're still in the phase of accumulating. I started my earning years probably later than the average person. I get that, but you get to a point where you want to give back and do the right thing. So we're starting to have more of those conversations, and that's how my interest in giving deepened. And it's also through connecting with people like yourself, Mark. Uh, you've had you've been on my show twice, and you've really helped create a few episodes that are amazing roadmaps for people who want to learn more about these topics, and that deepened my interest further. And so here we are today.
Beautiful. Well, part of our mantra that we talk to people about because they may have gotten a little further in life than you, but we say, we like to take people from success to significance, right? Like you become successful at some point, you realize,
Mhm.
okay, I've got enough, whatever. So let's talk about the podcast for a second. First of all, at North York General, they must look at you as a celebrity. Like, here you've got a podcast, you do take so much leadership roles, but it's quite unique. Tell us about the podcast, how that came about. What was your interest in podcasts? How long you've been doing it for? And what do you talk about?
Absolutely, Mark. So the idea came to me in 2020, and it was April 2020. And this is when headlines were all over the place and the world was entering a darker place. And so that month, not by choice, I only worked 4 days because our volumes at the hospital plummeted. And it wasn't so much that I was worried financially, but it was more I don't do very well sitting around idle. And so I had told my wife, I said, listen, Seema, I'm getting very interested in finance. I ask my accountant questions all the time. I probably drive him nuts, but I want to learn more. And not only do I want to do that, I feel like there's a way to continue bringing value to the world. So I told her my idea. Why don't I interview subject experts on various personal finance topics? And why don't I learn and share this knowledge with everybody through a podcast? She said, I love the idea. Don't even think about it too much because she's like, you tend to overthink, just do it. So I did a quick Google search that night. There wasn't much out there. I said, I'm going to start a podcast. And then initially people were wondering, well, you're a physician. Why are you doing this? And I said, guys, at some point, you get to a stage where I'm a radiologist. I sit behind a screen 85% of my time. The rest of the time, I do see patients, but most of my time, I'm sitting behind a screen. So after a while, things become a little bit more routine. You develop mastery of a subject, and then you say, well, now I want to try something different. I want to grow in a different way. And so for me, podcasting, learning about finance, sharing this with my colleagues, it's added a whole new dimension to my life, and it's also shown me there's many ways to bring value to the world. So I can share a podcast now, and I would say that the average episode has probably more than 2,000 listens at least. So it's amazing what you can do by putting out a piece of work that's going to stay there forever. It has that evergreen characteristic about it, and it's a great way to add value to the world, grow as a person, and continue staying curious in life. So that was my kind of starting point and what's kept me motivated on this path.
Good for you. No, it's great. We at Philanthropy Friday, we started off as well, and we figured how many people are really going to be interested in this and topics. But we get
Mhm.
between 100 and 1,000 people registered for each of
Wow.
our
Wow, that's
philanthropy.
tremendous
And then
reach.
what
That's
happens is
tremendous.
when we have about 15,000 contacts on our LinkedIn, and it gets replayed, and I hear from so many people like Charities and individuals who say, Mark, I learned so much from it. I look forward to your session. So good for you. Listen, we need a lot more education. I find that's what's really lacking is there is a lack of financial literacy, basic
There is. There
financial
is.
literacy.
Absolutely. Mark, and I have to say, you do a very good job on LinkedIn teaching people about these concepts, but also you share a lot of personal stories along the way. And when I read your posts, I often see pictures of you with other people, and I can tell that relationships are very important to you. So I think you do a very good job teaching people about these subjects in a relatable way. So I've learned a lot following you in that way as well.
Thank you. I so appreciate it. Look at there's so much work to do still, but it's a marathon and not a sprint, as we say. So it's
Absolutely.
great. So let's talk a bit. I mean, you drank the Kool-Aid. You're on
Yeah.
the show because it's about philanthropy, and I realize you're still a work in progress.
Mm.
Who inspired you? I mean, I don't want to take full credit, right? Yeah, it's even though I'd like
Yeah.
to, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
who inspired you around just the use of philanthropy and stuff? Because I know there's some of my friends who are also have been involved.
Well, there are three people, yourself included, three of you came onto my show and you all educated us on a very similar topic. And that was the importance of giving, but also how to give in a tax strategic manner. So it was yourself, Mark, Jamie Golombek, and Ali Spinner. You all came on and you talked about the power of donating through appreciated stock shares in your corporation, transferring those to charity. And we can get into the nuts and bolts of this later.
Yep.
But once I heard it 3 times, I said, "Okay, there's gotta be something here," and I'm pretty sure I approached each of you individually to just clarify my understanding on this topic before I actually executed it, and I have to say it's a wonderful way to give and to do good, and in many cases, you can give more than you would be able to otherwise, and so I think it's really a win-win for
Yeah,
everybody involved in the process.
beautiful. And I'm assuming of those three, I was at the top of the list, though, in terms of
I
good
mean, this
looks,
is
intelligence, personality, passion. I just, I'm very close with Ali and with Jamie, so I have to,
Absolutely. No, that's why I brought you onto the show a second time, right? So yeah, it's all good.
have they been on a second time?
You know what? You got interestingly, you guys are in that esteemed group. The three of you have all been on for repeat episodes.
Oh,
So
rats! I thought I
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah,
looking for
yeah.
one. Okay,
But
it's
have to get you on for one more then. So yeah.
so you know what we'll get to the appreciated security soon, but it is remarkable that still 99.9% of the population is still giving by cash checks and credit cards, which is the most cost and tax ineffective way of giving. But we'll come back to it, and you'll share with us sort of your insights in terms of
Absolutely.
what got you over the ledge on that. But let's
Yeah.
just talk. You mentioned about having 4 reasons to be philanthropic, and I like the topic, doctor's orders, which was great. So,
That's
you know, we're living in a time right now. The world needs a big hug. The world needs a big hug. It needs a kiss.
yeah.
It's there's so much volatility and so much disrespect, like the lack of respect for people, and just letting people, it's my way or the highway, and the politics, and it really it emotionally can knock you out. I find that it has a big impact on me, and that's why I try to stay away from all the social media and whatnot. But
Mhm.
but being philanthropic can actually have some very, very positive physiological results. Correct? What would you say
Uh,
is that? Can you
uh,
talk
uh,
about your first nut?
sure, absolutely. By the way, I love your preamble because so much of what you said there, we're going to dissect all of it. So many reasons to give. I think probably the most important is we know that giving will make us feel good and will make us happier. So, how exactly does that work? Let me go back to a story that happened recently. So, recently I was driving to a retirement dinner for one of our senior radiology partners in downtown Toronto, and I was on the Gardner and I exited and I hit this wall of traffic. I was stuck on a ramp. The traffic didn't move for half an hour. People who know me well, my wife will attest to this. I don't do well in those situations. I grew up in a small town in Kingston. And so I could feel my blood pressure was rising. I was not happy. Literally, I didn't move anywhere for 30 minutes. And then there was a man on the ramp, and I could see he was looking for money, wasn't well off, and I could see he needed some help. And so in that moment, Mark, I was thinking, like, okay, what is a way in which I can not only help somebody else, but lift my own spirits here? So I just happened to have a $20 bill. I gave him the $20 bill and he kind of looked at me in shock. And I just said, no, sir, just please take it, do some good with it. That uplifted my mood immediately. And when you look at the evidence behind giving, people have conducted experiments around the world, different geographies, different age groups. They have given money to students at UBC, to people in South Africa, India, in Uganda, and what they have found that if they gave people two options, you spend the money on yourself or you go ahead and spend the money on someone else. And they followed up with those people to gauge their happiness scores. universally, people felt better when they spent the money on somebody else. And that holds true for everyone across the world, and it doesn't really matter on your income level. So some people will think, okay, I have to be really, really well off to start the giving process. Well, you don't. It doesn't matter what your income is. You can take the small steps to get started today. And we as physicians like to understand the evidence and try to explain things on a more cellular level, like why is this happening? But the research does show that when you give, when you do good for others, it does release dopamine. And so dopamine is our pleasure hormone. It makes us feel euphoric, it makes us feel good. And I think that's the mechanism behind all of this. So there's ample evidence as to why giving makes us feel happier. And I think that's a great way. And to be honest, just talking with you about this topic, it's uplifting for me on a Friday. So that's reason number one.
That's fantastic, and I agree with you. I find that personally, as a religious Orthodox Jewish person, our goal in life is we're supposed to emulate, the Almighty. We're supposed to be, and the ultimate of the Almighty is giving. You
Mhm.
give, and the way you do that is you reach a spiritual part of you. I find it really does touch your soul. The challenge, and I want to ask you for your opinion on this, is we see that there are two types of people in this world. There are those who give, right? And then
Mhm.
there are those who don't give. Like, why is it that these people over here give and these people over here who I've met, who, physicians, I'm not going to, just so happens I'm thinking of one physician worth about $10 million that gave away $254 that year. Why is it that these people give and these people don't? Because there's a lot of those people, and those people need to see what or understand what you're saying, and those people who are already giving need to tap into it even more to be even more impactful.
That's a great question. I think when we think about money, we think about what can we do with the money? We can save it, we can spend it, we can invest it. But there is one other really important piece, and we can give some away. And I do believe that that last part, the giving, right off the bat, it's probably not discussed as much as the other things. Speaking for myself and my colleagues, also, I know that many of us who did start earning a little bit later in life, naturally, and this has happened to me too, Mark, naturally, there's more of a focus on accumulating wealth, especially in those early years, especially in that first decade, to plant those seeds for the future.
Yeah.
And because so many of us start earning later, so many of us enter the world with a lot of student debt, it's really hard sometimes to take your money or your mind, sorry, off of the wealth accumulation. But if you take what we just discussed about how giving is tied to happiness and you follow the evidence, I think if you take that evidence based approach, that can hopefully sway some people to start thinking about this a bit earlier in life. But that's my take
So
on it.
beautiful. Okay, so
Yeah.
and I understand the pressures of having a young family and
Hmm.
children and all the bills and your profession. I get that. So really, as a doctor, what you're saying is that people are looking to live more healthily and with more uh, more energy and more passion in their life. You're saying that becoming philanthropic could be the prescription for something great like that.
I think it can be an important piece of the puzzle. Absolutely.
Okay, good. So
Yes.
everybody, you've heard that from the doctor. Take note. Okay, that being philanthropic can improve your physical and emotional well-being.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay, and we often say that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Like I've found that people are giving. They learned it in their home. They learned it in their synagogue, their church, their mosque. They just got that DNA very early on. The challenge right now, I feel, Yatin, is that the next generation, like I'm 62. I don't know, whatever. I still feel like I'm 21, but it's passing that along, that
Mhm.
torch to the next generation, especially in a time where everybody's got ADD, our attention span is 30 seconds maximum. There's fads, there's fashions, there's advertising. What are we, why is philanthropy so important with regards to our kids and the next generation?
Oh yeah. So getting back to what can you do with your money? We talk about saving, we talk about spending, we talk about investing. I talk to my kids about all these things, and now I've introduced that fourth element. You can give some away. So Going back a couple weeks ago, I was in the car with my family. We were just driving in our neighborhood, and then I saw a boy on the side of a road. He was sitting behind a table and he was selling things. So my wife and I said right away, let's stop, let's go support him, let's see what he's up to.
I love
And
those
so,
too. Whenever I see a lemonade stand, I'm the first guy
yeah,
that
yeah. By the
always.
way, so lemonade stand,
I'm
we
going
didn't do
with
it last
this
year.
afternoon. This
Yeah.
afternoon, I have a lemonade stand and somebody actually is selling chillant at their lemonade. Okay, but anyway, go ahead.
That's something I want my boys to do this summer. We're going to do it. We're going to make it happen. But this boy, we got out, we went and talked to him, and I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm selling some snacks, I'm selling some candies. Half of it is going to go to Sick Kids Hospital, and the other half I'm going to keep for myself. There's a few things that I'm hoping to get later in the summer, and I'm trying to save up, but I'm trying to help the hospital too." Mark, this boy was maybe 10, probably 9 years old. I was blown away. I just felt so in the moment, I didn't have any cash on me. I wanted to support him. I said, "Is there any way I can support you?" He said, "Well, you can make an e-transfer to my mom. So this is her email address." And I was like, okay, I pulled out my phone. We each took an item. And in that message of the transfer, I wrote his mom a message. I said, "Your son is amazing." And so that to me was just like, wow, this kid is so beyond his years. And
Wow.
I showed my boys that this is a great example of how to do a little bit of good and also how to make a little bit of money too. So, why is this especially important for our kids? One, Mark, we are all living in a digital age and a social media age. So, think about what we do day to day. When we want to go shopping, we go to Amazon, we click a few buttons. If you have Amazon Prime, you get the delivery the same day or the next day. You want to get dinner for your family, you hit a few buttons, it's there within half an hour. Everything is instant. There's instant gratification. The focus is always on us and consuming. And then when it comes to social media, there's great content out there, don't get me wrong, but then I find a lot of the time we become a little bit absorbed with, hey, how many people are reacting to me? How many likes did I get? How many comments did I get? Everything is so instant. And I find that it's important to introduce a few measures early in life to shift the focus towards something else, not just on you, what you're consuming, what you're doing. Do good for others. And I think that introducing that concept of, hey, it's important to give as well. I think that's going to become a critical topic for our kids because let's face it, the internet, social media, it's going to play an increasing role on how it shapes our children's lives. So shift the focus, introduce that balance. That's why I think it's critical to talk to them about giving. And so we have the aspiration of that lemonade stand this year, and I love that example of that young boy in my neighborhood who was giving away some and keeping some as well.
Beautiful. Well, the lemonade stand I'm going to this afternoon is at 16 Campbell Avenue in Thornhill. I don't want it to like explode, but all the
That's not
money,
far from me. It's not far
all
from
the
me.
money is being given to an organization called KCC, which is a school for kids with medical and mental handicaps on Atkinson. And this
Wow,
young man who's doing it, who's 10 years old, is giving away 100% of his proceeds. And he's learning all about the
it's
business.
beautiful.
This is the third week he's doing it. So 67 Campbell Avenue, if you want.
Okay,
If,
I wrote that down. I wrote that down.
you
Yeah,
know,
very good.
getting back to the kids, I think what you're saying is spot on. I'd say that, there are probably a lot of grandparents who are listening or will be listening to this, where, I just became a grandfather. We had two grandchildren, one in February and in March. So it's a new chapter of life. And, we've done, thank God we have great kids and we've taken to to this place and they're on a good path. It's that next generation that, we want to make sure that they're going to be looked after. So I think it's really important that, when we talk about planning and we talk about, charity, that grandparents can be so instrumental in setting up, perpetual or enduring legacies, through charity for those grandchildren. Imagine if you went up to your grandchild or each of your grandchildren said, "Here, I'm going to let you give away $1,000 to whatever charity you want this year on the condition that you do the research on it first
Mhm.
and get involved. And then you're going to be responsible for giving $1,000." I mean,
That's
how
beautiful.
isn't that? It's so
That's wonderful.
powerful.
That is, Mark. Can I ask you? You have 5 kids, and congratulations, by the way. I know you now have
Thank,
grandchildren as well,
two
right? You
grand,
have a
little
granddaughter.
a
Yeah,
granddaughter
yeah,
and
yeah,
a
yeah.
grandson.
Congratulations on that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So the question always comes up, how do you I'm sure you talk to your kids when they were younger, they're grown up now, but about the importance of all these concepts, including giving. Some people will ask, well, how do I talk to my kids about this in a way so that they will be engaged? Do you have any thoughts on how to expose kids to this and talk to
It's
them in the right
it's
way about it?
it's a great question. Look, we have growing up. If you're somebody who grew up in a more religious, background, we have something called tithing. So we have an unfair advantage. Tithing is that, at least in the Jewish world, we tithe 10% of our money to give to
Mhm.
charity, and I'd say that the challenge with giving away money, especially our kids grew up. So when they received birthday presents or mitzvahs or what, it was always 10% doesn't belong to me. Now it's very hard if you have $1,000 and now you're giving $100 away to somebody else. It seems like it's a big crunch. But if you go ahead and you say, let's say you took the $100 bills, so you had 1,000 of them, you had 10 of them, right? And you go, this one's for me, this one's for me, this one's for me, this
Mhm.
one's for me, and you count 9 of this one's for me. And when you're giving away, you go, I've got 900. This is fantastic. I've got
Yeah.
9 1. So I think the key is that kids have to see the blessing that they have in their life. They have to see all the stuff that they have and look out and see all the people who don't have this or are not aware of, who don't have the pleasure. And when you see that you are so rich, and it doesn't mean you have to be Bill Gates and Warren Buffett rich, just that you have a roof over your head and you've got food on the table and clothes, and you see that, you can't not feel like, oh my gosh, I got to give some of this away to people who
Yeah.
don't have.
I think that's a great way to go about it. That's
So
wonderful.
yeah, so okay, so that's great. Kids philanthropy. I think it's an amazing way of passing along values and ethics and meaning to your children. That's outside of the social media and all the noise that they're getting. So and by the way, I just want to say on that there are organizations now where they actually encourage children, young kids, that they can
Mhm.
set up their own donor advised fund, which we'll speak about for like $500, and now they have their own named donor advised fund as a kid,
Wow,
and you're
wow.
you're like a boss, you're like a rock.
Yeah.
I've got my own
Yeah, your
foundation.
own
So the earlier you can do that, that's the Jewish Foundation of Greater Toronto has that in place. It's
Mhm.
like an impact fund. I'm just saying, imagine you put $500 in, and your kid has a foundation, and they have to give away 5% every year, and it's professionally managed, and you'll of course once you get started and you put that in, you'll just keep building and building and building it. But
Of course, yeah.
okay, so
That's
so far
wonderful.
so far we found out that philanthropy, number one, great for happiness, health, etc. Number two, kids can benefit. Let's talk about the third part of the prescription, which is, it's probably very good for business to be philanthropic. It's probably very good for your own network and people around you.
Yeah, and exactly. The way I saw this with my own eyes for the first time was when I started practice at North York General in 2017, and there was basically an annual gala that the hospital would be a part of, and you basically had to buy a table for the group. But then when I walked in to this gala, it was called the Heart of Fashion. There were people from so many different walks of life at that gala. I had so many wonderful conversations, and then my chief at the time, whose name is Ryan Margot. He's still our running chief. He's about 8 years into his tenure as chief, but he explained to me that day. He's like, "Yeah, we buy a table, but it's good for our practice. It's good to meet people." And then I started to think a bit deeper on this topic. When you take the time to connect with a charity, understand where your money is going, and you make contributions, there's so many ways to get involved with that charity. There may be a fundraiser. You may be invited to a gala. And then if you take it one step further, you think about, well, who are the people that you are going to be connecting with? You're going to be connecting with like-minded individuals. These are people who generally want to do good for their communities. They want to do good for the world. I know that sounds a bit cliche, but if you take it one step further, these are people who want to see other people and organizations succeed. They could very well want to see you succeed in your own life as well. And when I reflect on my own journey and what it took to get me to where I am today, there's so many people like I have to thank along the way, because you don't get anywhere without your network. And I think that charitable gifting, you can meet some really impactful and smart and interesting people that way who genuinely want to see other people and organizations succeed. So I think in that way, and I've seen it through my own eyes, especially through that Heart of Fashion. We had donors at that gala, and they were talking to us about, hey, we know that the hospital, for example, needs a new MRI magnet, and we talked about that, and we knew that these people were going to be supporting us on this journey, right? So it makes your goals for the short, medium, and long term possible. Great for business, great for networking. Another reason I think to give.
Beautiful. By the way, just a reminder, please, that the
Yeah.
chat box is open. Please, if anybody has any questions for Dr. Chad or for me as we go along, there's also some posting of some sources and whatnot. I couldn't agree more, and I think that people like to do business with people who are philanthropic for sure. And we've identified. We actually have a great article called 10 Ways to Become a Philanthropic Entrepreneurial Business Owner or Professional, where we break down 10 ways to incorporate philanthropy into your business, which would include, in my case, working with outside suppliers, where I
Mhm.
explain to them how I tithe money, right? And it's important to me. And I explain to them that if we're gonna be partners as opposed to suppliers, then what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to tithe whatever business I get you and give it to our charitable foundation. You'll get the charitable receipt, but we get the fame to give more money away. And we've, as a result, created hundreds of thousands of dollars that way. I've only had one time where somebody did not agree to that, but that's fine. It's not we're not putting somebody's arm behind their back, but people, it resonates with them. So if anybody wants that article, please reach out. I think it would be a great thing for you to learn about for your own sake and also to share it with other people.
I'm not surprised that your proposal was resonating with so many people, Mark. Like that's something that's really, really hard to turn down. I'm glad it worked out so well for you guys.
Thank you so much. Okay, so far, good for health, great for kids, growing your network, developing. Let's talk about the fourth prescription, and that's the one that I think I like to talk about. It resonates with what we're talking about. That there are some financial benefits to being philanthropic.
Yeah, so Mark, these financial benefits, a lot of this I learned from you. So thank you for educating myself and my listeners about this. So I think what you have educated people on is you give $2 of, you donate $2, you're going to save $1 of tax. And then you talk about that triangle of you can give to your family, you can give to charity, you can give to the government. And usually you'll have to prioritize two of those. And I think that's a very practical way to look at it that way. So
Yep.
I've thought about that as well. And then after you and a few others, like I mentioned, educated us on my podcast, I decided to put this into action last year. So my wife and I, we got in touch with a charity, and I'll talk about how to make this really meaningful in the next segment. But we got in touch with a charity, and I decided, knowing what I know, that transferring some appreciated shares would be the most tax efficient way to give. So I had some tax efficient tax or some appreciated stock in my corporation, and I wanted to give some of that over. So it was a very seamless process. I thought it was going to be quite a bit of paperwork. And in fact, when I called the charity, the individual who picked up the phone, they said, "You're the first person to ask us about this. I don't know the answer. Let me get back to you." I'm really glad that they did some digging behind the scenes, but that moment right there, Mark, told me that I don't think enough people are aware about this. And I even told them, I was like, guys, you should have maybe a little section on the website that says you can donate appreciated stock, make people aware about it. So they got back to me and they said, absolutely, we are a registered charity with an investment account. You can transfer your appreciated shares to our investment account. I called up my bank and they were actually able to do it within 24 to 48 hours. It was way faster than I thought. I filled out a few pieces of paper. It was really, really easy. And so the benefit of this is, let's use an example. Let's say you one day bought a stock of a company for $5,000. And let's say that grew quickly to $20,000. And let's say you want to transfer all of those appreciated shares to a charity. So the difference between 5,000, 20,000 is that capital gain of 15,000. That's going to accumulate tax free. The charity gets the entire amount. You get a tax receipt for your company in the entire amount. And then that capital gain, that $15,000, if you have that retained money inside your business, inside your corporation, you will move that same amount to your personal hands tax free through your capital dividend account. Just think about that for a second. With all of the tax changes that are being proposed, to spend $5,000 to move $15,000 to yourself tax free, you spent five to move
It's
$15,000.
it's
That's
almost too
insane.
it's
That's
almost too
insane.
good to be true, you
I know.
know?
I know.
But meanwhile, the government has introduced 25 pieces of legislation since 1995 to make it more efficient for Canadians to give. But that's a beautiful idea. Like, and that 15,000, if you would have pulled that out on your own, you would have paid half of it in tax, right?
Exactly, exactly. So you've only spent $5,000 to get that $15,000 out of your corporation. That's insane. So that really stuck with me. I was just like, okay, they keep coming out with a new set of rules about every 5 years to target corporations. This is, it sounds like it's too good to be true. It's not. It's true. So that's one way. And then I think the next step for us to really make sure that giving is a part of our fabric as a family is to do so more on the personal side. And I think the next step for me would be going the donor advised fund route, where you basically set up a fund like you already talked about, and then you can pick which charities are eventually going to get the money, but you're putting the money into the fund, you're generating some tax deductions along the way. But more importantly, you're committing to the process of saying, we as a family are going to sit down once or twice a year and talk about where we want to give and make this process automatic. So that's our next step.
Beautiful. Oh, yeah, it's so lovely. So not everybody who's listening has a corporation. Obviously, the lights are going on. What we want is for someone to have an aha moment, go, like, and reach out to their professional or reach out to us, have that conversation. But it does hold true again when donating personally, which I think most people have to realize. In that same scenario, if it was $5,000 of the cost and now it's up to 20,000, if they were to sell that stock, they pay taxes on the $15,000 of capital gains, which with the new budget, it's now going up to two-thirds, not just 50% inclusion rate. So it's going to get more prohibitive for you, but better for charities. Okay, in
Yeah.
terms. But if you donate that 20,000 to charity or to your donor advised fund, you pay no capital gains taxes and you get a charitable receipt for the fair market value. So it works both ways, but certainly corporate situations are great. And I'm glad to hear that you're going to be setting up this donor advised fund. I think you're going to love it. I had somebody tell me for years, and I was on a foundation board, you got to open up a donor advised fund. And I never got around to it. And then I finally did. And now I have four. And they're such a pleasure to use. And then there are certain ones, like even online, you can go to mycharityfund.ca, which is an amazing donor advised fund where you can navigate everything. Or out west, there's GiftWise out in BC. They've got an amazing online navigation system as well. So the key is just go ahead and find an opportunity to start and put the money in and just start playing with it. And you're going to fall in love with donor advised funds.
Mark, I'm really glad you said that. It sort of segues into my last point, but what a great way to, I think, spend your time thinking about which charities you're going to be giving to. Because I can tell you, I think there is a way to make this whole process a bit more meaningful for everybody involved. So, looking back at last year, when I decided, I sat down with my wife, Seema, and I said, listen, I'm moving from early career to mid career. We need to start talking about giving back. And so I thought about what kind of charity would I want to support? I thought about my values, what's important to me, my family. And one thing really stood out. My boys, fortunately, they are both healthy boys who get to play sports and they get to take part in recreational sport. It gets them outside, it gets them interacting with other kids. And I saw what that did for their development. I saw that made them happier. It made them more confident. And I told Seema, I said, I think I want other kids to have that same chance. So we contacted charities, and the one we contacted was Jumpstart. And the beautiful thing was they were so willing to have a conversation to educate on us on, if we do happen to donate, well, what kind of projects do they have in the go? Which project would we want our money to go to? And then they actually took it one step further. They invited us out for a site visit, and I got to play tennis with some of the children in the program. And at the end of the tennis session, one of the kids came and gave me a hug after and said, thanks for joining us. And I was just like, wow, like that just hit me, and I thought, I think if we take things one step further and just get involved, it makes the whole process so much more enjoyable. It really sticks with you, and I feel like that feeling of pleasure and happiness, it's not fleeting. It really sticks with you if you do things in the right way. So I wanted to leave people with some thoughts there.
So beautiful. Look at uh, people. Like I said, the world needs a hug. There's a lot of people walking around looking very depressed and despondent, and there's people like people who are passionate. Let's face it. People like to do work and do business and live and be entertained with people who are passionate, like the people in your world. And there are so many ways for listeners to get involved in communities, just like you have a golf community and you have a sailing community, you can have a philanthropic community as well. So reach out to one of your local foundations, the Toronto Foundation, the Barrie Foundation, the Mississauga Foundation, the Oakville Foundation. They're great. And there are whole communities there that you
Mhm.
could be associating with. And it's not just, obviously, giving away appreciated securities is a wonderful thing. I'd like to touch on maybe a few more before we carry on, but just because I've had some stuff happen just the last week. But so we talked about, yes, give cash, checks, or credit cards, least cost and tax effective way. Appreciated securities, number one as far as I'm concerned. Flow through shares, there are flow through
Mhm.
companies. So if you're going to give, it's a way of giving at the least cost possible. But with the new AMT rules, that'll sort of be restricted by maybe 30% less than usual. But people who are already giving, it's a great way to give. Somebody who has an old life insurance policy, they can donate
Yes.
an old life insurance policy and get a fair market value, not just for the cash value, but for the death benefit included, and donate that. And oftentimes the charities will actually pay for the premiums going forward. Or get a new life insurance policy and make the owner a charity now that your premiums are considered charitable donations, or donated as the beneficiary to charity when you die to save taxes. Something happened this week, which you'll really appreciate. Yatin, is I created $2.7 million of charitable gifts just this week.
That's incredible, Mark. That was going to be my next thing because I know you're a very passionate person in this space, and so my question was like, how is the mission going? Because I think you've done a really good job at blending. Like you just talked about life insurance and donating an old life insurance policy or getting a new one and donating that, but I think you've done a really interesting thing. Actually, one of my listeners reached out to me, and he's a lawyer, and he said that you back in the day had visited their firm and talked to them about how to blend life insurance with gifting. So I think you've done a really good job in this space. But how is like the mission going for you?
Thank you. We need more advocates, right? We need a
Yeah.
whole team of ambassadors and cheerleaders to do it. But it's hard. Like, it's definitely picking up in the sense that more advisors are getting involved. There's no
Mhm.
question. There's more dialogue around philanthropy. And I like to think that me and a number of people are sort of setting the pace to get the word out there. For advisors who would really like to go deep, we actually have a mentoring coaching program called Power
Mm.
of Platinum, which is a
Mhm.
1 year program that we teach professional advisors in insurance or investment to become experts in strategic philanthropy and high net worth life insurance. And we've had over 200 advisors come through so far. We're
Wow.
starting our next session in September, but it's been fantastic. So look, at this week, I had an introduction to an individual who was a widow. He got remarried, and his son put us together. And it turns out that he had a $1.7 million RIF. He's in his 70s, that he's taking out the 5% every year, but it's making more than 5%. So really, it's going to continue to accumulate. And he actually made the beneficiary of that his children. And when I explained to him that his children are not going to get $1.7 million, they're going to get about 790 of that.
Wow.
He
Wow.
said,
Wow.
what?
Okay.
It's going to be
Yeah.
taxed at
Yeah.
54%. So he said, if they don't need 790, in other words, you have a whole bunch of other assets, wouldn't it be nicer to take the whole 1.7 and today give it to a charity or to a donor advised fund and turn that all into charity? And
Yep.
again, you'll take care of them with other things. But the lights went on. He had no idea about that. And he's a very intelligent individual with some very
Yeah.
good, I know who his accountant is, but that's not the exception. That's the rule out there. So that was one great gift. So we're going to turn that into a $1.7 million charitable. And then another person, through a charity I got introduced to, they had an older donor who had never been married, had no children, and was sitting on a $600,000 RIF. She was worth several $1,000,000. And again, only taking out the minimum. And we said to her also, why don't you take the 600,000 and give it to the charity today?
Mm-hmm.
Right? At a small dial down in terms of the cost. And she was all over it. Plus, she opened up her will and created some more giving. So it was a total of another $1,000,000 gift. And when I was
Wow.
growing up, I used to think of those people who gave $1,000,000 to charity, and I was so in awe. And now I realize, no, everybody on this call on LinkedIn Live, we could be doing this every day. We could be creating $1,000,000 a day if we're talking to people and just educating them and letting them know. And if people are listening to you and coming onto your podcast, the doctors hopefully will also understand that, and we can make some tremendous impact in this world.
That's really powerful when you think about those numbers and with everybody getting involved. But Mark, it's great to see you, on your mission in this space and also educating other advisors along the way, because I think that's a great way to continue spreading the word, teaching people to broaden the footprint of what you want to see happen here. So I think it's great to see.
Thank you. So we only have a few minutes left. I don't see there aren't any questions other than somebody wrote a very nice note saying, great to see this conversation happen. Two legends, Yatin, Chadha, and Mark Halpern. That was our good friend, Jeff Bernstein, by the way, just so, but he's.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah.
So just in terms of just a summary. So again, the four pillars, obviously it's going to result in more happiness. It's great to be philanthropic, to benefit our kids, and obviously to teach them. The third is to grow our network and our businesses. And the fourth is just about the financial benefits of giving. And as you said, you're a perfect example of that, which is outstanding.
Thanks, Mark. Slow and steady. You
Slow
always
and
have to
steady.
continue thinking of ways to give and hopefully make it a regular process. But I want to thank you again, Mark, for hosting me here. I really enjoyed the conversation with you today.
Me too. First of all, I got to learn more about you and the stuff that you're doing, which is great. So please, everybody should reach out to Yatin and again, check out his podcast, which is fantastic. Every one of them has really good guests, and it's real meaty stuff. It's not like fluff. You're getting a lot of steak in there. So it's thank you for spreading the word.
Pleasure, Mark. Yeah, what we're trying to do is basically create a financial literacy curriculum on that podcast. And so I really think charitable gifting deserves a place there. So wonderful to connect again, Mark. Enjoy your Friday and the rest of the weekend.
Thank you so much. I just want to leave everybody with just the last couple of things here in terms of the next steps. If what you heard today resonated with you, please reach out. Do something about it in the next 48 hours. Reach out to your advisor. Reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you. There's no obligation. We all really want to help people do great and do good together. And please connect with Yatin on LinkedIn and with me if you're not already. There is a designation that's offered through the CAGP, Spire Philanthropy, the Knowledge Bureau, and called the MFAP, Master Financial Advisor in Philanthropy. I was on the faculty. I am on the faculty for that. Check it out. It's a great designation. As I mentioned, our next Power of Platinum is September the 12th, 2024. Please go to the website. You can register, pre-register. We'd love to have you join us. And our next Philanthropy Friday is going to be on June 21st, 2024, where I have the pleasure of having Mark Borkowski, who has been doing mergers and acquisitions for small and medium-sized businesses for probably as long as I've been. So he's probably longer. He's probably 35 years. We go way, way back. He's such a dynamic personality, knows so much about business, but really it's going to be about succession. Like how do you create a succession plan, and how going through that succession plan can you take the taxes that you're going to have to be paying, because that's just a reality, minimize those, or at least convert those into a charitable legacy for you and your family. It's going to be fantastic and fabulous, and look forward to having you. And again, learn about all of this. Please reach out to us. We collaborate with advisors from across the country, and we love to be involved. Let us be part of your team. But the one thing I ask is don't ignore it. There's just far too much riding on the line to ignore such an important subject. Yatin, it was so great to have you and learn so much from you as well. Your passion comes through, and I just want to thank you very much for being a guest on our show today.
Always a pleasure, Mark. I love talking to you and learning from you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And to everybody out there in LinkedIn land, I just want to say thank you very much for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedule. Please, if you found this of interest, forward the recording to people that you think would find it of interest. We're going to probably be cutting up some of the segments and making them into little tiny pods that we could be, showing people. And Yatin, you're going to be very much part of that. And thank everybody for attending. And everybody should have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the sun. And we'll see you back here again on June the 21st. Thanks very much. Have a great day, great weekend, and a Shabbat Shalom. Bye for now.